Question today: has the Bible been changed? Some people say the Bible may have been true and accurate when first written, but has been altered over the years, and the version we have today is not trustworthy. This is one of the most serious attacks on the credibility of the Bible. So, has the Bible been copied accurately, or was it corrupted over time? Can we trust the Bible we have today? Let's first ask, where's the evidence of corruption? A favorite tactic of critics is to throw out baseless accusations and demand that a Christian offer a defense. If someone claims the Bible has been corrupted, it's reasonable to ask what evidence exists to support that allegation. It requires no proof to criticize, but on what basis? Other ancient books are accepted as authentic unless proven otherwise, so why is the Bible treated differently? Some assert that Emperor Constantine, who lived in the early 4th century, was involved in corrupting the original message of Christianity. Again, where's the evidence? Someone can claim that the 1969 moon landing was faked, but what are the facts to support that? As an aside, check out a video by Adam Ruins Everything on the moon landing. Nonetheless, for those who honestly want to know whether the Bible can be trusted, some solid evidence is presented here. First, let's consider, when could the Bible have been changed? If there was corruption of the original documents, when would that have occurred? The New Testament documents were written and circulated among the early churches scattered throughout Asia Minor, Northern Africa, and Southern Europe from approximately 40 to 100 AD. None of the original biblical documents still exist. However, no original documents of any kind exist from that time period. The key question is the reliability of the copies and those made chronologically closer to the originals, leaving less time for possible corruption. Manuscripts of biblical passages have been dated from as early as 150 to 200 AD, such as the Chester Beatty Papyrus, P46, which contains 10 of Paul's letters, and the Book of Hebrews. The Bodmer Papyrus, P66, also dates to about 200 AD and contains the Gospel of John. The Codex Sinaiticus dates to the mid-4th century and contains the entire New Testament in Greek as well as the Old Testament Septuagint. Let's look at the earliest manuscripts. The earliest portion of the New Testament found to date is the John Rylands fragment dated to around 130 AD, which contains portions of John 18, verses 31 to 33 and 37 to 38. The Greek text matches that of later manuscripts, even further diminishing the possibility of corruption. Additionally, because the fragment was found in Egypt and the traditional place of composition is Asia Minor, some time would have been required for John's Gospel to travel that distance. Remember, the early 2nd century was not exactly the internet age, and information traveled much slower. Even the Quran, which dates from the 7th century, commended the Bible for containing the truth. Quote, "If thou wert in doubt as to what we have revealed unto thee, then ask those who have been reading the book from before thee. The truth hath indeed come to thee from thy Lord, so be in no wise of those in doubt." Surah 1094. The book, or the scriptures, is referring to what existed when Muhammad was alive around 630 AD. The Bible. By the time of Muhammad, thousands of complete or partial manuscripts of the Bible were in circulation on several continents and in several languages: Greek, Latin, Syriac, Coptic, Armenian, Gothic, Georgian, Ethiopic, and Nubian. To remove the Bible from circulation and replace it with a corrupted version would have been an impossible task. These manuscripts can be compared today, and have been, with the Bibles we have now. So there was no time for corruption or alteration of the biblical texts. Let's look at quotations of the New Testament. Early church fathers, writing from the beginning of the 2nd century onward, quoted the Bible extensively. In fact, if we had no manuscripts of the New Testament at all, every one but 11 verses could be reconstructed simply by referencing the writings of early church fathers, made within the first couple of centuries after the time of Christ. There are about 86,000 quotations of the New Testament in these writings, as well as lectionaries, church service books, in the early centuries. For example, Polycarp, who was a disciple of the Apostle John, writing around AD 150, quoted sections of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Irenaeus, a disciple of Polycarp, writing around AD 180, made over 1,800 New Testament quotations from 23 of the 27 New Testament books, omitting only Philemon, James, 2 Peter, and 3 John. Justin Martyr lived around 100 to 164 AD, quoted 330 verses of the New Testament. Other examples include Origen, 185 to 254 AD, who quoted almost 18,000 verses. Tertullian lived 160 to 220 AD, made over 7,000 quotations. Clement of Rome, around AD 95, quoted from the books of Matthew, Mark, Luke, Acts, 1 Corinthians, 1 Peter, Hebrews, and Titus. Ignatius knew the apostles, wrote 7 letters quoting Matthew, John, Acts, Romans, 1 Corinthians, Ephesians, Philippians, Galatians, Colossians, James, 1 and 2 Thessalonians, 1 and 2 Timothy, and 1 Peter. It's true that not all quotations by early church fathers were word-for-word exact replicas of the words found in the Bible. However, given the vast number of references, and by comparing the numerous exact quotations with the various paraphrases, the accurate transmission of the Bible is overwhelmingly confirmed. That's the New Testament. What about the Old Testament? The same criticism of the New Testament has been made of the Old. Since the original books were written hundreds of years before the oldest extant copies, how can we be sure that they were copied accurately? Okay, reasonable question. If it was necessary for scribes to copy the scrolls periodically as older ones deteriorated, there may be significant differences between the originals and the copies, right? Well, prior to 1947, the oldest manuscripts of the Old Testament dated to about AD 980. Since the last book of the Old Testament was written around 400 BC, there's a time gap of around 14 centuries. However, in 1947, the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, which contain manuscripts dating to 150 BC. So, upon comparison, did the later copies contain major discrepancies from the earlier copies? This is a pretty simple way to determine corruption. No. In comparing the manuscripts, it's clear that the scriptures were copied with remarkable accuracy. Realizing this process was done by hand, with ink, on papyrus, no photocopiers or printing presses. To illustrate, Dr. Gleason Archer, who personally examined both the AD 980 and the 150 BC copies of the book of Isaiah, wrote, "Even though the 2 copies of Isaiah discovered in Qumran Cave 1 near the Dead Sea were 1,000 years earlier than the oldest dated manuscript previously known, they proved to be word-for-word identical with our standard Hebrew Bible in more than 95% of the text. The 5% of variation consisted chiefly of obvious slips of the pen and variations in spelling. So the Dead Sea Scrolls confirmed the extreme dedication to precision by the scribes who had the utmost respect for the Bible." To conclude, there's no evidence that the Bible has been corrupted over time. In fact, the evidence shows the opposite, that both the New and Old Testaments have been very carefully preserved throughout the years. We can trust that the Bible we have today accurately represents the Bible as originally written. For a variety of articles on different topics, visit the Information About God website. We promise not to ask for any money or your contact information, and there are no advertisements. Also, for a large library of excellent high-quality videos, check out Inspiring Philosophy